So my name is Eden Grace, and I'm a member of Beacon Hill Meeting in Boston, and I am also on the staff of Friends United Meeting. I serve as the Director of Global Ministries. I've been in this post for 5.5 years, and prior to that, I was 9 years living in Kenya, working for Friends United Meeting alongside African friends. So I've been gone from New England Yearly Meeting for 14.5 years, but my membership is still in New England, and that's clearly the center of my Quaker identity is as a New England friend. And so in that way, I'm really grateful to be participating in this process of discernment together with you. I think there are maybe two reflections I want to bring into this process. One is just about the global power dynamics within Friends United Meeting. FUM is an association of yearly meetings. It doesn't have authority over any yearly meeting. Each yearly meeting is independent, but it is an umbrella organization of yearly meetings. There are 37 member yearly meetings in FUM. 22 of them are in Africa. So in terms of the member yearly meetings of FUM, the majority are in Africa. If you look at actually the number of member individuals in FUM, like the people, 90% of them are African. So FUM is a majority African organization, and our governance reflects that. According to the way FUM is structured, every member yearly meeting sends representatives to the general board, and so the board is majority African. And the ways in which we structure the decision making, we hold 2 meetings a year in Africa and two or three meetings a year in North America and the Caribbean to try to maximize participation of all of the members of the general board. Sometimes North American yearly meetings, when we talk about the board of FUM, we can find ourselves, without realizing it, talking about the North American members of the board of FUM, which is of course a much more homogeneous group than what the real board is. And so when we talk about the board undertaking discernment on the sexual ethics policy or on any other aspect of FUM, I think it's really important to remember who this board is and where it sits and out of what experience of Quakerism it is deriving its discernment. FUM tries extremely hard, and we're not perfect and we have a long way to go, but we try extremely hard to be mindful of and undermining of the power imbalances between the global north and the global south, the ways in which historic patterns of power have distorted the relationships between us as brothers and sisters in our shared family of faith. And we try to be extremely mindful of making our governance a place where those power imbalances and power injustices are dismantled. This does mean that for some North Americans, there can be a real feeling of impatience around the board's inability to do what we might want them to do. But the reality is that if we are committed to a process of racial reconciliation, of post-colonial healing, then we have to be willing to stay in this work together with those who previously we were quite comfortable silencing. And I think that that's a dynamic that's at play here, as friends in some parts of North America are grieved and feel a sense of urgency around a kind of change that needs to happen, is to understand what is the nature of the process that we're engaged in here and with whom. and to be willing to rest in the trust that that God is seeing our family of friends into a united future together, but that requires relinquishing our desire to have control over timelines and outcomes. So I think that's the first message I want to bring into this process, is to remember who is the we of FUM that is doing this discernment together. I think the other thing I want to share is something that Jim and I learned through our years of living in Kenya and being in community with East African friends. And it made us aware of how recent the changes have been in North America that lead Friends and New England Yearly Meeting into a place of full acceptance of our LGBT community, and to realize that our African friends are on a different timeline, and it's, I guess my appeal is for a certain amount of cultural humility for where this conversation stands right now in the African context, where it is nearly impossible for there to be a public presence and a public awareness of healthy, well-adjusted, God-honoring LGBT people and relationships. I mean, of course those things exist, but they are closeted the way they were in our society not that many decades ago. Those people do exist, and I have met them, but what is commonly known in the community is primarily derived from the East African experience of sex tourism and of extremely destructive and exploitative behavior by European men who come to the beaches on the coast of Kenya to purchase the services of African boys as sex tourists. That's what East African friends think we're talking about. And when they hear our yearly meetings saying that we affirm and celebrate our LGBT members, they think we're affirming and celebrating sex tourism and the exploitation of boys by men. There's just a complete disconnect in the experience that leads us to the commitments that we have. And so our East African friends are pretty genuinely distressed about our condition. And that's only going to be, that misunderstanding is only going to be overcome through relationship, not through the hurling of condemnations at each other back and forth across the oceans. But I fear that in our really genuine and God-given urgency for justice for LGBT people in our society, that we fail to remember that in other parts of the world this conversation doesn't look like this, and that if FUM as a worldwide community of friends who are committed to unity and to staying together despite the things that work so hard to divide us from each other, that it requires a certain amount of patience and humility from us to be able to stay in the conversation, in the relationship, and understand that other people have other kinds of experiences than what we have. So I am fully committed to the work that New England Yearly Meeting is doing, both around this withholding policy and trying to find right order for us. And then also in the larger picture of working for justice and liberation and the righting of terrible wrongs and the full inclusion of all of God's people. But at the same time, I really want us to be careful to guard against a judgmental spirit, and to be willing to walk together with those from other parts of the world who have a different experience than ours, and to seek God's truth together. That is my appeal to you, friends, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in this conversation with you.